Alright, so this week I'm going to be covering an airport suggested by a viewer. And for that, we're heading back to where it all began. New Zealand! This time, however, we're going to the other big city on the North Island. That's right, folks, we're heading to Wellington. Home of... Gandalf? Anyway, their airport has some pretty unique features, so without further ado, let's take a closer look. This is Wellington Airport. The airport holds a special place in the history of Wellington, New Zealand. It began in 1929, originally named Rongotai Airport, and sporting a single tarred runway and almost no terminal or hangar facilities. Still, despite this, the airport officially opened in 1935. But as Wellington began to experience increasingly harsh winter weather during the 40s, the tough but necessary decision was made in 1947 to close the airport, as it was no longer serviceable during the winter months, and the aerodrome had become a major safety concern. Luckily at the time though, Wellington's friends at Paraparaumu had an airport about 57 kilometres north of Rongotai, and they were happy to fly the Wellington Airport banner instead. Just 2 years following this move, Paraparaumu was now the busiest airport in New Zealand, handling up to 50 movements a day and housing up to 20 aircraft at any one time. Within just 9 years of receiving its new title, Paraparaumu was already receiving growing pressure to relinquish its role as Wellington's airport. City authorities began lobbying for the upgrading and development of the original Rongotai site. You see, Wellington's local Chamber of Commerce claimed that Paraparaumu's terrain was too rough for larger aircraft to land there. But come on, does that look rough to you? In reality, the primary reason behind the push for a change was because Paraparaumu was deemed to be too far away from Wellington's central business district in the city's centre. Eventually, however, the lobbying paid off, with major earthworks and site preparation beginning at the old Rongotai Airport grounds in 1958. This time around, the airport was going to feature a terminal building and hangar facilities at the cost of $6.8 million and the houses of Rongotai locals. Whoa, hang on. So you're telling me that the federal government forced locals to sell their homes to them so that they could use the land for the new airport upgrades? All I can say is that Daryl from the castle would not be impressed. Anyway, so in 1959, the new look Wellington Airport opened in grand style. More than a decade of smooth operating went by before the airport's next development, which came in the form of a 300-metre runway extension to accommodate the brand new DC-8s. Then yet another decade went by until 1981, when Wellington reached a point where a serious facelift was needed to the airport. Let me explain why. The domestic terminal was literally a shed of corrugated iron that was originally used to build aircraft. Its main features? Well, let me tell you, letting in a gusty and chilly draft and being constantly overcrowded. It was becoming a bit embarrassing for Wellington's residents. The gateway into their country's capital city was looking like a farm with a tar strip next to it. So in 1981, a master plan to upgrade Wellington's domestic terminal was developed at a cost of $10 million. However, it was quickly determined that a more realistic cost would be $20 million. $20 million? Nope, sorry, no way. That's right, the federal government decided that $20 million was too much, so they shelved the master plan. It was at this point that New Zealand's national carrier, Air New Zealand, was like, okay, no, seriously, something needs to be done about this. So they, along with our long-lost friends at Ansett, funded the extensive renovations of the domestic terminal facilities in 1987. They also built an entirely new terminal to serve as Ansett's base for New Zealand domestic operations. Well, okay, look, that's not exactly how it happened. Ansett did ask to use the main domestic terminal, but seeing as it was partially run by Air New Zealand, who would be in direct competition with Ansett, they were denied the opportunity. So naturally, Ansett went all Thanos on them and was like,
fine. I'll do it myself.
Yeah, there goes my monetization. So yeah, Ansett built their own domestic terminal. Another 10 years went by. Multiple new plans for upgrades or extensions were developed during these 10 years, but every single one of these plans were heavily protested by Wellington locals due to the consumption of land that would come with the new plans. Then, finally, in 1997, the New Zealand federal government decided that they would pull the trigger on a newly developed plan to build a brand new international terminal to replace what was still an old shed that used to be a plane factory. The plan cost $116 million, but this time, our mate Jenny Shipley finally caved in and approved the spending. Kind of like when you were 7 years old and your mum finally caved in and bought you something after a few hours of relentless begging. Please, please, please let us build a new terminal. Okay, fine, but will you stop crying, please? Anyway, so in 1999, Wellington Airport officially unveiled a brand new, fully operational terminal. Incredibly, this meant that the previous international terminal was closed after, and yes, this is true, 62 years of airport operations. It was now time for Wellington Airport to enter the new millennium, and they did so under new majority ownership by Intrafil Limited. And in 2001, a new, unique business opportunity came along. In December of 2001, a man named Peter Jackson released his first film in a 3-part trilogy of movies called The Lord of the Rings. It was one of the biggest movies of the decade, and it was filmed and produced in Wellington. Lord of the Rings was an instant cult classic, meaning that fans quickly wanted to come and visit the world of Hobbiton from the films. Wellington saw a great opportunity to capitalise on this, so they did. In 2003, in line with the release of the finale to the trilogy, a large statue of the character Gollum was added to the terminal. This would be the first of a long line of incredible Lord of the Rings based additions to the airport. Wellington Airport was quickly embracing its title as the entryway to Hobbiton and the world of the Lord of the Rings. Then in 2009, in line with the new regulations put in place by New Zealand's Civil Aviation Authority, Wellington's runway was once again extended, this time by 130 metres at the cost of $35 million. Wait, hold up, did you just say 35 million? To add 130 metres? Seriously? Wow. With the new decade in 2010 came the construction and completion of The Rock. No, I said The Rock. No, the other rock. There we go. So yes, this cool piece of architecture was opened in 2010 and acted as a terminal extension and featured a public airside lounge at the gate end of the international terminal. The airport's first introduction to the 787 came in 2011. Then in 2013, a master plan was produced for a $40 million extension of the domestic terminal's South Pier to accommodate for growth in domestic travel through Wellington. The project would begin in 2013 and finish in 2015. Was the project actually built? Nope. A year later in 2014, it was announced that the project would actually cost $240 million and would include further extension to the main airport building as well as doubling the width of the domestic terminal's North Pier. Expected to be finished by 2016. Was the project actually built? Nope. In 2015, it was announced that $30 million in car park facility upgrades would also be added to the plan, pushing back the completion date by 6 months. So was all of this finally built? Still nope. But something that did begin in 2015 was another runway extension of 300 metres to the tune of $485 million? Is that a joke? $485 million? For 165 metres more than a $35 million extension that took place in 2009. I am so confused. What happened with this project? Okay, so the simple answer is bureaucracy. As with most of these projects, Wellington is its own worst enemy. Each project has been proposed by Wellington Airport before Wellington City Council then commissions an independent report into the accuracy of the project's projected economic benefits. Almost always, the findings have been that the expected benefits have been grossly over-exaggerated, and the projects have been either revised or put on hold. Take the latest runway extension, for example. Wellington Airport's master plan said that the extension would provide $2.3 billion in economic benefit to Wellington. Once the independent report on the master plan was completed, in reality, that number sat at almost half the original figure. In 2018, an extension to the main international terminal did finally take place, fulfilling in part the long-belayed master plan for airport expansion. The terminal upgrade was largely a facelift, but did see the addition of expansive views across the terminal to aircraft and the coast. And according to Wellington Airport's Chief Commercial Officer Matt Clark, the upgrade will transform the airport's main terminal to a light open space where travellers can intuitively find their way to and from their flights. And that's actually a fair reason to upgrade, to be honest. Airport layout is a regular problem that plagues the airport industry even now. So let's summarise what Wellington looks like today. The airport handled over 6.5 million passengers in 2019. It houses 2 terminals, an international and a domestic terminal. The domestic terminal receives more aircraft than the international terminal. The aerodrome supports a single runway of length 2,081 metres running in a north-south direction. The airport also houses a small amount of private aircraft hangars and a small-scale cargo processing centre. There are sufficient car park facilities that lie between the airport building and the Miramar Golf Club. The golf club, by the way, is actually older than the airport. Now, I know that I've been critical in this video of Wellington's master plans over the years, so I think that it's only fair that I give them another chance. Who am I kidding? I love master plans. With that in mind, here's Wellington's master plan for the future, WLG 2040. And straight out of the gates, we can see that Wellington Airport are once again producing some bold estimates, claiming that this plan will generate a cool $4.5 billion in economic benefit. One thing I will say about this though is that the timescale is much longer this time, with this figure being the final gross impact expected in 19 years from now. And a lot can happen in 19 years, believe me. The project also notes the real economic benefit that the airport currently provides to Wellington, which sits at $1.1 billion. Okay, so what juicy upgrades and expansions sit in this master plan? First, the northern section of the international terminal will be redesigned to create a dedicated pier for regional airline operations. The southern portion of the international terminal will then be extended to add additional gates for international airline operations. The eastern apron will be extended to allow extended access to more gates for international aircraft. The southern freight buildings will then be completely overhauled to create a larger, more capable and more efficient facility for freight operations. Then the master plan starts to talk about potentially repurposing the current western apron that is currently largely used for private aviation. It kind of looks to me like they're sort of just hinting at that to test the waters with Wellington residents to see if they'd care if they took over the small portion of the aerodrome that is used for private and mostly recreational aviation. Then finally, the plan is to perform significant upgrades to the city's infrastructure in and around the airport. The plan is to relocate most of the airport's service buildings, such as telecommunications, waste management and potable water services, to a new, more consolidated location that grants better civilian access to the airport, as well as allowing much smoother aerodrome expansion in the future. Then there will be an upgrade to the seawalls that hold the runway in place at the edge of the bay. There's also potential for a runway extension, but as with every runway extension so far, it's likely to be really expensive, seeing as the runway has to be extended into the bay, and that stuff ain't cheap. Now, it's time for our regular airport environmental checkup. So, what's Wellington doing to help? Well, WLG 2040 does have a dedicated section that outlines the environmental goals it hopes to achieve by 2050. They're a willing participant in IATA's global mandate to reduce carbon emissions across the globe by 50% by 2050. And for Wellington, they want to ensure that they can meet their end to this. So they've also set a personal goal of reducing carbon emissions within their aerodrome by 30% by 2030, which should ensure that they are well on track to meeting IATA's 2050 target. Good job, Wellington. Hopefully you guys can share with us a document outlining how you intend to reach these targets. Nevertheless, I believe in you guys. So that's it. Now you know everything there is to know about the home of Middle-earth, Wellington Airport. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like, and I reckon you'll love the other videos I've done in this series. And hey, if you did enjoy it, consider subscribing. I'd love to have you on board. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a great week. I'll see you in the next one.